What is up, you amazing people? It's Nima here, and today I want to talk about a game called Dungeon Drafters. Now, this game is a turn-based deck builder roguelike with the movements of Crypt of the Necromancer, which if you haven't played that, it's sort of a tile grid-based game with movement being like vertical or horizontal. So essentially, this game starts off with you being able to pick one of 6 different adventures, and each one has a specialty. More like you inherit the deck that they use the most, but you're not married to it. Once you get further into the game, collect more cards, not only are you encouraged to change your deck, it's a very viable option to keep you going. But to start things off, they want to keep it simple. So the red deck focuses more on direct attack. It's more like an arcane archetype, if you will. The blue deck is more of like a saboteur, an indirect combat style. The yellow one is more on defense and healing, and the other one is more for traversing the level. And so, as I said before, this is a roguelike dungeon looter, if you will, where you basically go through these different areas of the region trying to explore dungeons floor by floor, defeat enemies, collect money and different loot, as well as different treasures that you might find. There's a few little secrets here and there, as well as just different information to find. Eventually getting to the boss where you beat him and you'll usually get like a bigger reward, usually cards of something of that nature, maybe a rune. And then you go back to the hub area where you can exchange your money for different runes and other things to help build your deck up. As well as, it's a pretty vibrant little city you got there. A lot of NPCs, a lot of people to talk to. You can, in fact, get some information from some of these different characters that are walking around, as well as you can actually talk to some of the characters that were on the ship with you. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention, when you pick a character, you guys are all traveling to this island, and then the ship goes down, and you find yourself in a dungeon. Once you die or beat the level, then you're transported to this hub. So, just to clarify there. But anyway, most of the game does actually involve the combat and being in these dungeons. Now, the thing that I find about this game that I think some people are going to have a problem with is if you're not good at deck building. If that's not one of your things, this game is not going to welcome you to that world. In fact, this game can be quite challenging. Even on the easier levels, I found like it was pretty difficult, and 1 or 2 wrong moves will basically ruin an entire run for you. You see, each floor is broken down into different segmented areas, some involving combat, in fact, most involving combat, and some being like a place to save or to heal yourself. Well, once you enter a room where you're in combat, it's all turn-based, and so you can make the wrong move. You only have 3 moves per turn, and you can easily use all of that just moving your character and maybe even end up in a really bad spot. So the game in that regard is very, very unforgiving, and you're really matched up against some very difficult enemies even early on. So for me, I think like this is one of those games where if you're not good at deck building games, or it's not really your thing, or something even you want to get into, this is probably not a good starting point, just because you're going to have so many of those things that are sort of expected of you to know, and the idea of how to best utilize your cards. So I will say that this game does offer a decent tutorial, but when it comes to some of the things that I personally, who am not good at deck building games, really kind of wanted some insight to, I wasn't really able to find much information. For instance, there was a point in the game, and this lasted longer than I would like to admit, but where I had kind of messed with my deck and I was moving cards around and I was doing this and that, and then it basically said, oh, your deck is invalid, you can't go fight. You can't go explore different dungeons. Until you validate your deck, or have a valid deck, I should say, then you can't go. And I struggled figuring out how to bring my deck back to being valid. In fact, to the point where I actually just restarted the game. Like, knowing that, like, if they could have given me some sort of information, like, hey, you need this many cards, or you need to have, I don't know, lined up with your ruins. I don't even know why my deck was invalid. I really have no idea. So I can't point to what I did do that, messed it up. So it's that sort of thing that I felt like needed more hands-on if you're a person who's new to it. Now, if you're used to all these games and stuff, and you're an old pro, you're probably going to really like it, because there is a lot of depth to the game and a lot of content, especially for the price. And it's only $14.99, and I can already tell you, just from what I've played, I've barely scratched the surface, and I put in quite a bit of time. And there are a lot of dungeons to explore just right out the gate, with different environments that are in different regions, and even each floor of these dungeons can take a significant amount of time. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of content here, as well as, I would say, like a big open hub, which allows for you to do some side quests, meet some NPCs. But for me, this was another point that I really felt like they kind of missed on, because as big as the hub was, right, I didn't feel like there was a lot in there. It felt kind of void to me. Like, yes, there are some side quests, there is some different people to interact with, but like, I missed more shops. There wasn't a lot to spend my money on, for instance. Like, it just seemed like they could have added a little bit more in that regard, and maybe even had a little bit more playing into the story, because there is a story. It is not just an afterthought like a lot of roguelike type games. Not very deep. You're basically there. Your main focus at the beginning of the game is to rid the world of this corruption and to find the source of it, and of course quell that. And honestly, the game doesn't get much more deeper than that. If you do look into some of the lore and really explore the entire game, yeah, you might find more, but it's, even at that point, it's still not as deep as, a lot of other stories are. So, the fact that there's just some space missing. And I think, like, for the most part, this game is a game that's just focused in on that combat. It's focused in on the deck building, and very utilitarian in that standard, where there's not a lot of other flashy things to take your time. And that's fine, like, because a lot of people who are into these type of games, that's just what they want to do. They want to get into that loop of, go to a dungeon, get some loot, beat some enemies, improve yourself, cash in, redo that cycle. That is appealing to a lot of people, especially in the roguelike genre, and I think even to the deck builders as well. But for me personally, I would have preferred the game to hold your hand a little bit more, maybe be a little bit more welcoming. But I understand that maybe this is just not the game for newcomers, and I definitely respect that. And just lastly, as I went on and on about the gameplay, I will say, graphically, the game looks really good. I like that pixel art style. It just works for me. I think the characters are defined enough where they pop off the screen. Like, they are individuals. And most of the environments are rather detailed. They look really good. Like, I think, especially for this type of game, these visuals just work. Love the pixel art. Looks great. Music is pretty good. Nothing to write home about, but it's on a large enough loop that it doesn't become repetitive, and what is there is nice. And as well as performance and how the game runs, it's very good. This game is well put together. I would definitely say, like, if this is your genre, it's worth it for $14.99. Just say, like, newcomers, beware. It's not going to welcome you. But for me personally, I would give this game a 6.5 out of 10, and that's just for me. There's a lot of bias in that. I could see if I was really into this game, it could easily be an 8 out of 10, because there's nothing inherently wrong with it, just the fact that it wasn't very welcoming, and some of it is a little void. That's just really my thing. Anyway, let me know what your guys' thoughts are, if you guys are going to check this one out, if you're interested in it. Also, tomorrow I should be having the performance review for Kingdom Come Deliverance, so that'll be cool to check out, see at least how it goes from where I'm at in the game and how it's doing. Obviously, can't do a whole review on that game any time within the week. And then also, Unicorn Overlord will be out this weekend as well. another review coming out. Anyway, thanks a lot, guys. I appreciate each and every one of you. Love y'all. Bye-bye.